rock and roll. My name is Jason Call. I am the campaign manager for the Stein campaign. I love Denver, by the way. I live in the Seattle area. I have been an activist for 35 years now. I got my start in activism protesting the first Iraq War in 1990, 1991 when I was a sophomore at the University of Washington. I've continued my anti-war activism throughout the last 3 decades, and boy, there's been a lot to protest, particularly this last year, but year after year after year, from the second Iraq War, until we left. I was a high school teacher for almost 20 years, math teacher, union activist, building rep. I'm on the board of a healthcare organization in Washington State called Whole Washington, where we are fighting for a state-based single-payer healthcare system. I have 2 kids that I have raised in the activist tradition. They're now 18 and 21, and hopefully they will be set on the path to fighting the good fight for a sustainable and just future. But that's what I'm here for. Thank you.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Burns. I'm a local elected official, apparently one of the only Green Party elected officials in the state. And, thank you. I'm at the city of Lafayette, right here in Boulder County, and I'm in my 2nd term on the council, 4-year term. So I'll be around for another 3 years. For anybody in Lafayette, I'm not going anywhere yet. And the major driver for me was that my other job is as a science education specialist for the National Science Foundation. And there's a lot we need to do around climate change, and equity is a big piece of that, and economics, and of course, efficiency with the way we use the funding that is available. So I've been doing that for the last 30 years as an educator, and before that I was enlisted U.S. Navy and worked on advanced avionics on fighter jets. So I've been around a lot of technical pieces, and the other thing that I did, I had a short stint there working in the child clinical psychology program at the University of Colorado Boulder, where I got my degree in communication, and that research work was with helping children understand or helping them be better communicators. So that's a little bit about me, and thank you for being here tonight.
All right. I'm Jill Stein. I'm the Green Party candidate for president. And they are terrified. They are terrified of us. Witness this outrageous, ridiculous, ludicrous attack ad that they put out yesterday. It is such a sign of success that we have graduated to that point where they actually feel the need to put out an ad against us. It's awesome. I say bring it on, keep it happening, because it only helps us. It helps us every time they attack. I describe myself basically as a mother on fire. That's kind of how I got my start in activism, although I should back up, because truth to tell, I got my start during the Vietnam War, which told me everything I needed to know about American politics. And that story has just been repeated over and over. I wanted nothing to do with the political process. I was an activist and worked on a whole variety of issues that kept backsliding, no matter how well we organized, no matter how big our coalitions, how effective they were. We passed campaign finance reform, for example, in my home state of progressive Democrat, Massachusetts, where we passed overwhelmingly by voter referendum clean elections, basically public funding, equitable public funding, not a match system, an actual funding system that creates a level playing field for all candidates. We passed it as a voter referendum by a huge margin, and then the progressive Democratic legislature repealed it on a voice vote, which told me everything I needed to know about the Democratic Party, that it was basically beyond redemption. And to make a long story short, I wanted nothing to do with the political process until I got tricked into running for office in the year 2000 by the Greens, who said, just do your activism, but do it while running for governor, basically, and talk to a larger audience. And I discovered, having entered that race out of desperation, I came out of it with a whole lot of inspiration, seeing that people are really hungry for a politics which is not fake, which is not predatory, which is not, manipulating people. And I really, discovered there's a lot of distance we can cover by engaging that process. And that's sort of how I come to be here today. And the last thing I'll say is that I was, by training and by profession, a doctor practicing clinical medicine. And then I discovered basically that we can't fix what ails us, because the origins really of our health and our disease is really in our communities. That's where we're made or we're broken, basically. And as I engaged in community, dealing with food deserts or affordable housing, trying to shut down polluting incinerators and coal plants and so on, I discovered that we were fighting City Hall, basically, on every front. That even when we had all the people, all the right arguments, all the right solutions, we were still basically cut off at the pass by the power of this coalition between big spenders, that is, big money, and our elected officials, who are paid to basically stay the course for those who are succeeding under the current system. So I transitioned from clinical medicine to political medicine because it is the mother of all illnesses. That is our sick political system. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I come to be here today, and just incredibly excited about what's happening in this race right now. So we'll get to more of that later. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'm still starstruck. But I also want to say that when I pick you for a question, remember, you got a minute to ask, but you're also going to be sitting here with these amazing folks. No pressure. So, who has a question? Raise your hand if you have a question. I see a hand back here. Come on up. And make sure you let everyone know your name right here, please. And let's keep it to a minute, pretty please.
Hi, my name is James. I live in Boulder. And it was about this many years ago that I saw you at the Mercury, and it was delightful to have you there, and thanks for running again. I had a friend today just say the Democrats have done so much, this administration has done so much for the people this year, right? Softball, knock it out of the park.
Yeah. This is what they say. They tell us that they've done such great things for the climate and the economy, Bidenomics and all that, and on healthcare. And I could quickly try to debunk all of those in 3 minutes. But, their claim to environmental fame is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is actually a fossil fuels first bill. They say the best, environmental act, the best climate bill ever passed. But in fact, if you want to build any major renewable facility, first you have to you have to auction off 60 million acres of offshore water for fossil fuel extraction and 2 million acres of public land every year before any major renewable can be built. So this is really a mandate for the fossil fuel industry. On healthcare, they claim that, they've implemented this great program for bulk purchasing of pharmaceuticals. Well, that's what they promised. I mean, they've been promising that for decades. But what, in fact, they've delivered is a bill that will reduce the cost through bulk purchasing of 10 pharmaceuticals by 2026. Out of thousands of pharmaceuticals, they're going to deal with 10. That's great. Thank you very much. On the great friend to labor that they are, what did they do? They could not even bring to a vote a $15 minimum wage, which is what they promised, And they also disrupted the right to strike, basically. The railroad workers union, which was on strike for really critical safety reasons and just, dignity on the job. They're forced basically to be on call constantly, so they have no predictable family life. They're just always subject to disruption. And they have as little as 2 or 3 people manning trains, or I should say staffing trains, that can be 2 to 3 miles long. And it was just before the tragedy, the catastrophic spill, the toxic spill in East Palestine. They were striking for issues very much that could have prevented that spill, but that right was denied by the White House and the bipartisan Congress, including the Democrats, including even most of the progressive Democrats in the legislature, the so-called squad, that all voted to force those workers to go back to work. So they had to accept a contract that they had already rejected. They were prevented from striking, and they were prevented from actually dealing with this critical problem. So forget the propaganda, in so many words. Forget the propaganda. The Democrats make a lot of promises, and then they're very good at disinformation. The Republicans don't make promises at all. They just are what they are. So that's why so many people are really angry at Democrats and moving from Democrats to Republicans. Not that they like Republicans.
Couldn't
but
even
that,
pass a minimum wage increase.
yes, they should have passed that minimum wage increase. Absolutely. So, in so many words, keep up the fight. Don't let them try to talk you out of it.
Before we move on, I want to ask the audience, and it's bright up here, so I'll do this. 2 questions. Do you feel like the Democrats made your life better over the last 4 years? Do you feel like the Democrats are stopping things from getting worse? They have not earned your vote. That's it.
There you go.
Would you like to add to that?
There's a lot to unpack in it. At the local level, what has been described here is what we deal with on a regular basis. Like, there's more assistance that we need, and with movement of the available funds, we could actually address issues that we have at the local level. So that's what I would add to what we've been talking about.
Awesome. All right, let's see some more hands. Amy? Amy Jo. We love Amy Jo.
Great shirt, by the way.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
I made it.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh, man, that is incredible.
I painted it. It is
Are you
acrylic.
serious? Whoa, beautiful.
I can't believe I'm sitting up here with Jill Stein. Okay, so I'm just wondering, because in Colorado we are suffering drought, like most of the whole western half of our country. Like, we have not enough and they have too much right now. What kind of strategies would you offer our drought-stricken and also flooded country?
Great. Wonderful question. So on day one, we will declare, day one, when we turn the White House into a greenhouse, okay, and make the world a better place for it. On day one, we will declare a climate emergency, because we have a climate emergency. And that, by simply declaring the emergency, which the Biden-Harris administration could have done on day one, this is not new, the meltdown of the climate in so many ways in every, possible dimension of climate crisis. We have that crisis right now. By declaring that crisis, we then unleash over $500 billion every year to deal with that crisis. So, our major plan is basically to zero out fossil fuels, or near zero out, in the next 10 years. That is the goal of the Green New Deal. And while the Democrats, sort of tried to steal the Green New Deal, they took out the most important component, which is like eliminating the fossil fuels. So, bad on them and shame on them. But what we will do is immediately declare a moratorium on all new fossil fuel infrastructure as we ramp up the jobs to create clean renewable energy through, solar, wind, geothermal, et cetera, all the ways that we can create that energy through efficiencies. We will also go all out on renewably powered public transportation. That's how we solve, the issue of transportation. Electric vehicles are great, but they're not efficient enough to actually solve the problem, and we have limited amounts of, rare earth metals and so on that are needed. So we need to do this in a way that maximizes efficiency. We will also build renewably powered and environmentally efficient housing. That is very much a part of the climate crisis, and we have a housing crisis too. So we're calling for 15 million units of basically public domain housing. That is public housing now called social housing, which will be built with public transportation so that we're not requiring more cars on the road, more air pollution, more traffic jams, and so on. And we'll also transition to sustainable agriculture. So we have to deal with the crisis at its source, but then of course, we've also got to deal with the fact that the Colorado River is running out and is expected to shut down within the next 1 to 2 years completely, which means that the California agriculture system is its curtains, and that's half of the fruits and vegetables for the country, which is why we need to move emergently to sustainable agriculture. We need to bring back sustainable gardening, on like a household and community basis and so on. So there are many things that we can do to offset this crisis, and we got to move like it actually is an emergency, and we will do that starting on day one.
Thank you so much.
If I can quickly add, there are some areas in this country that we cannot build anymore. We cannot grow anymore. I lived in Albuquerque for 5 years, and I ran for Congress down there, and this was in 2008. And back in 2008, the aquifer that runs from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, it's about a 75-mile aquifer, was a third mined already. It was already collapsing in on itself. And this is happening all over the desert Southwest. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. We have to stop thinking that we need a growth economy everywhere. We need to focus on degrowth in many areas. And we have, just the fact that our climate scientists knew 15 years ago that the aquifer in New Mexico was collapsing, nobody listened to them. When I was running for Congress, I was trying to talk about this, and the Democrats were saying, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about degrowth here in Albuquerque. Nobody's going to elect you if you're talking about degrowth. People were not serious about it then, and the people running the show are not serious about it now. That's why we need a change of leadership, and we need to be listening to climate scientists about what is possible and what is not possible. Democrats and Republicans alike will not do that.
Yeah, okay, so I'll keep it quick. This is my everyday work, so I'll do this as quickly as I can. We have a problem on the planet, and locally, if you're wondering what you can do, it's pretty much all about water. Retain water as you can. Use permaculture. Use ways to retain the water that you have, and let's stop wasting water. Out west, we can't afford to waste water. And some of you might know about Willoughby Corner. I'm sure you don't know about that, but it's the largest affordable housing complex in Colorado history. And it's a zero emissions structure that's built in for all populations. So Willoughby Corner in Lafayette, which is part of Boulder County, it's for everybody in Boulder County, is one of the examples of what you can do. And if you don't have a climate action plan in your town, call me. We have one that our sustainability director can, you can use that as a template, and one of the things is to know what you're looking for and save your water. Willoughby.
And I think everything that you guys have said so far means you guys have to run for office. So we're talking about these things, right? I just want to take a moment to talk about Prop 131. And then I promise I'll get back to your questions. And it ties into my call for you to run for office. Because there is a not so distant future should Prop 131 become a reality, that your general election ballot will have 4 Democrats or 4 Republicans to choose from. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like democracy to me. So we need you in this fight talking about the issues that people aren't hearing about. Because there's a reason why people aren't hearing about it. 1, we need more people to run. 2, the corporate interests don't want you to hear about it. So force the conversation anyway. That's why we're having this event today. We got to force the conversation, and we got to run for office. With that, let's see some more hands. Please.
Hi, I'm Luna Lococo, and I'm going to start out with a definition and then get to my question. Solar punk is a movement that imagines a future that values people, community, and nature over profit, with an emphasis on renewable energy, environmental rehabilitation, political system rehabilitation, public gardens and libraries, clean energy transportation, equality, diversity, inclusion, and justice for all. It seems clear to me that you believe in a future like this that is possible. Do you have any words of hope to say to people foraging in the alleyways and working in the rooftop guerrilla gardens for the solar punk future?
Cool. All right. I love this concept. This notion of guerrilla gardens to get to this solar pump future. Or
We're fighting to survive. We're not asking for permission.
yeah, exactly. And let me say that needs to be our attitude here across the board. We are fighting to survive, and they are not going to give it to us. They are fighting for the survival of the 1%, and they have the illusion that the 1% can survive without the rest of us, but they can't. They can make mincemeat out of the world, and they can't just go to their bunker in New Zealand and think that it's going to work. So we are in this, and we're in this together, and together we're unstoppable. And that's the part they don't know. I guess, my words of encouragement, I would invoke Frederick Douglass, who said that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. To me, there is no hope without power. For me, hope is derivative of power. So I prefer to focus on power, and then the hope comes automatically.
So it sounds like you're saying we need to take our power back.
Exactly, and we need to organize. And that's the other thing that I wanted to say. That's what Alice Walker, the novelist, poet, Palestinian rights advocate, to paraphrase her, she says that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have that power. This is all about our discovering that we have power and flicking the switch in our own minds from powerless, which is what we're told 24/7. We're told that we're powerless, that resistance is futile, and that we should just might as well resign ourselves to this abysmal future. And polls show that 50% of people under the age of 26, and maybe a fair number over the age of 26 too, feel that the future is hopeless and have contemplated harming themselves because of that within 2 weeks of the poll. We are not in a sustainable mode now. We're absolutely not. We are self-destructing. Or I shouldn't say self-destructing. We've been told we're self-destructing. It's actually, it is the predatory oligarchy which is destroying the world and our economy and the planet. We are not self-destructing. We are being assaulted. We are under attack. And it's just like recognizing that that is the problem. The problem isn't us. The problem is that we've been subject to these very powerful and very abusive forces. This is not rocket science because there are so many solutions to each of these crises. They can be solved if we recognize that we have the power to solve them. So it's all about flicking the switch from powerless to powerful. And the moment we recognize that we are powerful, there's nothing that really can stop us.
Absolutely.
If I can just quickly follow on to that, the movement for Palestinian liberation is giving me great hope in this moment. When we are out there on marches, and I'm sure you guys have been on marches, but since October 7th, weekend after weekend after weekend, city after city after city on the campaign. You probably are aware that Jill and I were in St. Louis and stood with students in an encampment, and we got arrested. And I was in the jail cell with kids. I'm 53 years old. I was in the jail cell with kids who are 18, 20 years old, and not a single one of them was like, oh my God, my life, what have I done? They were all like, screw the system, man. We're doing the right thing. We're here. We want to be in this jail cell. We're in this jail cell for the right reason. So kids who are standing up for justice right now are giving me great hope. For me, as Gen X, I feel like my generation has lost a lot of opportunity along the way to do this. But as a high school teacher for 20 years and having my own kids and seeing what's happening with the Palestinian liberation movement, I think there's a real moment that we future. But there's a lot of anti-electoralism out there in the youth, and I'm not a massive believer in electoralism. Like, it's not going to save everything, but it is a tool in the toolbox, and it gets very underutilized by young people. And so whatever you can do to encourage young people, there is power in voting. Not everything, but there is power in it. Please get out there and vote. My message to young people watching: vote. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to thank you for bringing up Alice Walker and Frederick Douglass. And please, as you move forward, gardening is part of those independent pieces. And we have a climate justice issue. Those who can't do for themselves, please remember to help them along the way. And that means not a handout. It's helping them to understand how to be independent along the way, because our power is real. One of the guiding outcomes that we have in Lafayette is sense of place. Help everyone have a sense of their place and take their power that they have.
Beautiful. All right. I see a hand up over there.
Jill, how are you guys? Rima Wadan, an apologetic Palestinian, and I really want to talk to you really about our community. Our community has been pushing people to the Democratic Party, the lesser of the evil, of all the parties, and we're sick of it. So talk to me and how I convince my population of community members from the Muslim population that we're sick of seeing wars in the Middle East that have destroyed millions of Iraqis that have died, Afghanis that have died, and now Palestinians. And we're seeing the genocide unfold under our taxpayer money and the death of all these innocent Palestinian children. And how do we promote a peaceful future so that we can all work toward a unity versus the destructive lesser of evil type scenario?
Beautifully said. And let me just start by giving a shout out to the Muslim American community for really being the conscience of the nation and a moral compass for us all. And because of your courage under fire, the American people have been awoken. And faster than I have ever seen in my lifetime, the American people have been persuaded, thanks to the leadership of the Muslim community and the Arab American community. The American people were persuaded within 1 month that this genocide must be shut down. A Reuters poll done in November, just after the genocide began, showed 68% of the American public want, even then, an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution. And then, since then, the American public has been convinced that we need an immediate weapons embargo as well to make this happen. So, number one, to the Muslim American community, I just, want to reinforce that you have accomplished a miracle here in this country. And I really urge the community to continue that miracle and see it through, and to know your power. I mean, this is one of the most organized, effective, hardworking communities I have ever seen, and the speed at which this community is organizing. We received the endorsement. I'm so proud to say and humbled to say we were endorsed by Abandon Harris, formerly Abandon Biden, 2 days ago. And prior to that, yes, let's hear it for Abandon Harris, which also is part of this moral compass, by standing up absolutely unapologetically to say this is genocide. This is genocide in our name, with our tax dollars, with our diplomatic support, with our weapons. This is being conducted by us. Essentially, Israel is the proxy state of the U.S. empire, and it must be stopped. We have complete power to stop it. And thanks to the moral vision, of the Muslim American community, so many people now understand that. And I just want to encourage the Muslim community to take this home. Keep it going. The hardest part has been done, which is to persuade public opinion. That's already there. What we have to do now is basically persuade our elected officials by unelecting them, because they are not capable of understanding what needs to be done. And the history here, whereby the Muslim and the Arab American community has been so abused, so taken for granted by both parties, not even allowing a Palestinian to speak at the Democratic National Convention, that is just unbelievable. The fact that while the Biden-Harris administration says that they have been working diligently day and night for a ceasefire, in fact, they were giving the thumbs up to the Israeli occupation forces to move their assault now into Lebanon. This is incredible. So the Muslim American community continues to be betrayed. There should be no, convincing necessary. The community should be encouraged and supported for building on your current success, and let's vote these warmongering criminals out of office. And I hope they will help do that.
Thank you.
And if I can follow up on that, I find it perfectly acceptable for Kamala Harris to lose this election because of the genocide. There is no lesser evil in either party. And for people who say, well, Trump would do worse, I'm not interested in a hypothetical of what might happen under Trump, because we already know that Harris has said she's going to continue it. So if our presence in this election, and people say, you're going to cause Trump to win, you're going to cause Trump to win. This isn't about Trump winning. We don't want you to vote for Trump, right? But we don't want you to vote for Kamala Harris, because you cannot vote for genocide. Sami Hamdi, if you know the Thinking Muslim podcast, you probably saw this the other day. He said, we Muslims, and I'm speaking as a white person here, so what he said was, we Muslims survived 4 years of Trump. Over 200,000 Palestinians did not survive 4 years of Joe Biden. I don't know what else there is to say. And without getting too emotional here, I see my own kids in every dead Palestinian child. I see my own kids. You cannot vote for it. You cannot vote for it.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add one quick thing? I'm going to usurp your time here as long as you've, yeah. Every vote for Harris or Trump is an endorsement of genocide, and it enables genocide. And don't let them talk you out of that. It is nothing less than continuing, expanding, verifying, and validating genocide. Do not make a deal with the devil here. Do not be talked out of your humanity. We need to stand up. Every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire, telling the empire that its days are numbered. We are organized. We are coming for them in all kinds of ways. They're going to be out of the jobs, and some of them are going to be headed to The Hague, which is where they should go. The leadership in particular, they are war criminals here. And Every vote that we cast is a powerful and meaningful vote, and it brings closer the day when that weapons embargo will begin and the war is over then. Thank you.
And I'm going to say one more thing, because this is the issue of our time, right? This right here is the issue of our time. I have a lot of friends that I worked with in the Bernie movement for a decade, and I have told them where I stand, and I get chastised for it, And what I tell them in return is, if you vote for Kamala Harris, you are going to wear that genocide vote like a scarlet letter your entire life. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself.
That was quick. Come on down.
Sorry, I'm a little starstruck. I thought this was a Zoom call. I didn't realize you were going to be here. Hi, my name's Kitty. And, sorry. On that note, I would like to know, try not to be emotional too. I want to know what you're going to do. When you become president of the United States of America, what are you going to do on day one to stop this genocide? I want to know.
Thank you so much for asking. Well, let me say we're not going to wait for day one. If we are lucky enough to win this election, either that night or the very next day, we pick up the phone and we call Bibi Netanyahu and we tell him that the genocide and the war surrounding it, enabling it, are over. They are over. And no matter what he says, it's over, because it's actually illegal for the United States to be sending weapons to Israel on 3 counts. One, you cannot send military support to a country that is violating humanitarian law and human rights. You cannot send military aid to a country which is interfering with the distribution of humanitarian aid, and you cannot send military support to any country that stands in violation of nuclear weapons treaties. And Israel actually has violated the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So on 3 counts, it's actually illegal for that military aid to be provided. Right now, it's not like we need any excuse, and the president has the authority to approve transfers. So even if Congress is appropriating it, the president can choose not to enable the transfer of those weapons. So the support for the war is over before day one, and Israel is entirely dependent, really on like a daily basis. They need to constantly replace the missiles of their Iron Dome as well as their offensive missiles. Israel is not surviving, actually. Even just the war on Gaza has exhausted Israel. It has never conducted a war for this long. It doesn't have the person power to do it. And it's devastating to Israel's economy, the number of people who've had to be taken out of, the productive workforce. Their tourist industry has crashed and burned. One of their major ports has had to close, in part because of the opposition of the Yemenis, who are acting under really the ruling of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, which said that all countries must do everything in their power to interfere with the conduct of the genocide. And Yemen has basically been attempting to interfere with the delivery of supplies for that genocide. So, on many fronts, this has been devastating to Israel. Oh, and a recent poll just came out this week showing that 1 out of every 3 Israelis is planning to leave. There is an economist, an amazing economist named Shir Hever. I don't know if you've heard of him. He used to be like a reporter for a Real News Network at one point. Now he does other stuff, but he's amazing. And he's an economist. And one thing he said was that countries that go fascist cannot last. They cannot. People will not stay. They cannot function. They will not survive. And we see this happening to Israel under its fascist apartheid state. So it's not long. It's not long for this world.
So I would like to follow up on that because there's one missing piece that we have not discussed. And if you guys remember when Obama got elected, how disappointed were you that he did not hold George Bush and Dick Cheney accountable for the war crimes in Iraq? And it's mystifying to me. It's another reason that I could never vote for Kamala Harris. They're rehabilitating Dick Cheney. He is, yeah, right? The worst war criminal our government has presented to us in my lifetime, Dick Cheney. And Obama said, no, we're not. We're gonna look forwards. We're not gonna look backwards. And where are we now? Because we did not look backwards and say we got to correct that problem. So there's an accountability piece here also. And I'm talking Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Antony Blinken, Matt Miller, who lies to us every single day, gets up on stage and lies to us. Karine Jean-Pierre, every single one of them are accountable. The media, the cheerleading media. Remember Judith Miller, who lied to us about the weapons of mass destruction and started that cycle in the New York Times that everybody just bought into? The media is buying into this. The media needs to be held accountable. There needs to be accountability here. We are watching a genocide play out in real time on our phones, and people need to be held accountable, and it goes beyond Benjamin Netanyahu. It is the leaders in this country that need accountability.
Did you have something more? Okay. And I want to add on to that just for a moment. Each and every one of you here today and watching, and all the supporters across the country, we are that accountability. It's coming.
That's right.
So it's easy to lose hope, but you're it. So let's get some hands. I see you. You'll be next. Gentleman in the back.
My name is Rob Prince. I'm a retired teacher. I have two comments, which I'll make quickly, and a question. My first comment is I want to say publicly, I guess it's pretty public, that despite hearing from my daughters, my neighbors, my colleagues, about how I have to support Kamala Harris in this election, I'm publicly stating I am here to gladly speak to support you, Jill Stein, in this election. All right. And if I had more time, I'd go through the arguments that I have heard. There aren't that many of them, but I'll leave that aside. Secondly, this morning, because a buddy of mine was speaking, I attended a national conference of SDS that was taking place in Denver. Young folks from all over the country. It was a wonderful thing. But what came out of that was the level of repression that has been coming down on universities. Kids getting expelled, free speech things. And I know you're aware of this, but in the discussions, everybody talked about what was going on the campus, city rules, but the sense I get is that this is a national project of repression. So I'm wondering if you have any insights on that, and because it's just too coordinated. Okay.
Exactly. And let me refer you to an investigative report done by Lee Fang, formerly with The Intercept. Now he has his own thing on Substack. A really great reporter. So he did investigative reporting on this. And it's rather shocking, but out of this investigative report, there seems to be plenty of evidence to take a number of nonprofits and probably APAC as well to court based on FARA violations, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. This is coordinated and it's financed. It is financed. In fact, a lot of the financing is coming directly from the Israeli parliament to nonprofits in this country that are then coordinating. You know, why is it over the summer when things appeared to have gone dormant, suddenly all the universities have pretty much identical policies that suppress basic free speech and the right to protest. Where's this coming from? Where did 27 states all suddenly adopt comparable legislation making boycott, divestment, and sanctions illegal? This stuff is being coordinated and it is being financed. And if you just Google Li Fang and find his recent investigative report, and it will name the names of the organizations that have been involved and how much money hasn't been involved and where it's come from. So this is extremely dangerous. You know, we hear, I don't know if you heard about the Uhuru 3, the the African People's Socialist Party. Yeah, and Chairman Omali Yashatila, who was taken to court for a trivial amount of money that he received from Russia as part of what was really a public education program. The financing was trivial. What he was doing was helping to educate and mobilize the public, especially the African American communities, about reparations. This was a program to educate around reparations. And he was taken to court by, you know, he was raided. He was raided by the FBI with drones, with, just police in full riot gear, with a whole bunch of police vehicles. They blocked off his street to arrest him with all this fanfare for being a Russian agent. But what was he doing? You know, this is an 80-some-year-old guy who, this has been his politics and his activity. He was not operating on orders of the Russian government. This is a guy who's been active within the African American community about African American issues, and for those to be held up in court as evidence of Russian interference, you know, is absolutely outrageous. So at any rate, he's getting that treatment for basically enacting people's politics and receiving some trivial amount of funding. On the other hand, you have Israel providing millions upon millions of dollars for, you know, changing our legislation and for basically preventing candidates from running and achieving office. So that's, you know, isn't that interference? You know, that is election interference. That is interference with our policies and with our national sovereignty. I don't see that happening from, you know, from a lifelong activist going out to educate about reparations. So yes, absolutely, and there's a very strong case and a lot of evidence here, and it'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds. And one more thing, which is that in UCLA, which is where some of the worst abuse took place, there's now a lot of legal repercussions that are looking into what went on in UCLA and why was this Zionist mob allowed to attack innocent and peaceful protesters while the police looked on and did nothing.
All right. I do want to give us a time update. We have 10 minutes. That means we get to have one more question, and then we're going to do some final remarks from the panel, and we'll end with you. All right, are you ready?
Yeah. Hey there, my name is Chris Lococo, some relation, yeah. And one of the things that we get accused every single 4 years is that we only show up every 4 years. I know that that's a whole pile of bunk. The person sitting right there in the middle is directly flying in the face of that. But I would like to hear from you and, of course, Dr. Stein about how we are investing in our grassroots, how we're trying to empower the people that are actually on the ground to build communities, to build momentum, and to start getting the flywheel rolling. Because while we do show up on national news every 4 years, we are on the ground every day. And that can get hard, but it's also what is needed. So, your choice in order.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, well, we are on the ground every day. I mean, I ran for Congress 3 times. Twice I ran as a Democrat, and there is a story behind that. I was actually was a Green Party voter in the 90s, And because I was conned into thinking, you know, I had to get behind, you know, who was it? It was Howard Dean, and then it was John Kerry, and this was the way, and we had to get rid of George Bush. I ended up working for the Democratic Party for 20 years. And when I got to the highest levels of the Democratic Party, I was at the Washington State Central Committee for 4 years, and I saw what essentially the DNC does to the state parties to control those parties. I was out of here, right? So, and then I ran as a Green. People like me, and I think people like you, are involved in your communities every day. Again, union organizer, working for healthcare, working for environmental groups. I mean, I probably got 30 different organizations that I'm in touch with at any given moment, lending time to do progressive activity and to change whatever the situation is, because there are so many situations that need changing. And because we do it at a grassroots level, we don't get a lot of attention, right? The attention that we get is usually negative attention because it's corporate media wanting to shut us. It's corporate media wanting to shut us down because we are challenging their big donors, right? So here are some activists, you know, but I've shut down freeways. I've shut down city streets. You know, I have gone around to Starbucks in my district and handed them, here's how to unionize. And if you want to unionize, call me and I will be with you. Those are the things that do not get a lot of public attention, right? But they are all part of growing something into, you know, it's all about solidarity. It's all about solidarity with communities and with workers. So that work does get done out there, and it gets done by me, it gets done by Jill, I know it gets done by Tim, and it gets done by you guys every day. We don't necessarily need to publicize it all the time because that's not what we're about. What we're about is actually doing the work and trying to get results for our communities. Now, what we do want to do beyond this election is grow the Green Party into being a national party that can be competitive at every level, at local level, state legislatures, and the federal level. And if we can close on anything here, and this is for the audience, that does not happen without money. And this is the advantage of the corporate parties and being a corporate-owned party, is because they have got these giant corporations funneling millions of dollars into them to support candidates. It's a nice idea to think, hey, I can run a state legislature race or I can run a federal race, and I'm going to do it without any money because we don't like money in the system. That's not realistic. It does take money to run these races. So, you know, if I can, I don't want necessarily to do a fundraising pitch for our campaign here, but I do want to say that if we want to turn this into elected offices, it will take your money. It will take your volunteer labor, and it will take your money, and it will take your time. So if I can encourage everybody out there to do that, because we're all out here. I know we are all out here putting as much time into this as we can, every spare moment that we have, and sometimes more time than we have. But time, money, and your volunteer labor is what's going to happen, and just be committed to it.
So then, I want everyone to take away from this the idea that you do have the power, and you have people on the ground supporting you. Keep in mind there's ways you can enter this challenge, and climate justice is a way to address many of the things you've heard this evening. So keep that in mind. On the basic physics of the planet, we're too warm. We know this, right? That is a direct relationship to the amount of energy that we use. Reduce the amount of energy you use and get those who are using too much to reduce that. That's our big challenge. And the other piece is I'm going to name drop Catherine Hayhoe. Global Weirding is her YouTube page. If you don't know where to get started, Catherine can help you with this entree. And much of what we need to do is talk to each other. There's a researcher where I work who resigned to help people have the conversation, and it's about climate change. But in reality, we're at the point of climate justice because the global south can't do this, and we can't do it without the global south. It's going to take every person on this planet. So please find people to talk to that don't normally get a voice, and in this community, you can start with the African American community, and I've heard reparations mentioned multiple times. Maybe you bring that up and listen to the response for those who are like, hey, can we even talk about this? Because it's going to look a little different. And I can tell you, being African American in this community, there are a lot of microaggressions that we deal with every single day. Find out what those are without asking an African American. Ask somebody who's not African American what that means and what that would look like. And gardening, energy use, recycling, sustainability, and I'm going to bring in resilience, which is how do we deal with multiple impacts from climate change? And it's by building community. Just watch what happens in Florida after this last hurricane. They got hit twice. They're an example of what resilience needs to look like.
Thank you for that. With the last 2 minutes.
Last 2 minutes. So I'll say that, what we need to do is to keep going and to recognize that together we are an unstoppable whole. And in terms of, like we only show up every 4 years, that's absolute nonsense. And I think it's really important just to tune out the nonsense, because they will give you all kinds of nonsense and you're not obliged to answer that. That's just absurd on its face. We're here, we're doing the work, we're actually in elected office as well. Like Tim, we have some 150 people in elected office right now. So yeah, and the more of us that run, the better. And there is no magic quick fix here. We need to be deeply engaged on all of the issues and running for office. We have to contest for power. One of these does not work without the other. We've got to do them both. We have to have that kind of comprehensive battle going on. And this is where I became persuaded, after having been an opponent of political parties for the first 50 years of my life. So most of you are like way ahead of me. I only caught on after my hair had become this color that there is a reason for a true political party. Now what we see, from the Democrats and Republicans, that's just astroturf. These are not people-powered parties. These are corporate-powered entities. These are corporations, really. People-powered politics is really critical. Yes, we do have to have a fundraising capacity. We've got to grow. If we have more people, there's just so much more we can do. So by continuing to have this conversation,
All right, I'm sorry.
And by opposing the genocide, we can shut the genocide down, but then we got a lot of work to keep going and to end the oligarchy and the empire and rising fascism. These all go together. We can have an America and a world that works for all of us. We cannot get there without each other. So join your local Green Party, because that is like the umbrella here. That is what keeps us coordinated. That's what gets us to work together on a broader game plan. So that's what it's all about. Thank you all so much for being here.
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being here today. Thank you to our amazing panel, Jason, Tim, the one and only. And get involved. Google is free. Look it up.